there's a tweet recently I want to mention of yours. You said there should be a job that's just watching what someone does all day and running behind them, automating as much of it as you can. Take me through why you tweeted that and how you think about automation.
Um, yeah, so automation probably isn't the perfect word for it, but I think there's a blog post or a video or tweet storm or something that's halfway developed in my mind that I need to get out somehow. But the high level is if you look at a company that's incredibly complex that is running by people, right? So take as an example FedEx. I don't even know when they were founded. So 20 years ago, right? When there wasn't very much software, they ran off of principles that were codified and distributed, and everybody would read this paper and know this is what we do at FedEx. We're going to go do that thing. And the advantage that software has is nobody has to read that paper anymore. You can
Yeah.
tell a computer to do that, and the computer will grimly do that forever until it dies. Um, and the fact that it charges nothing is or next to nothing to do that is one thing. But the other advantage that I don't think Silicon Valley or anybody in tech fully appreciates is the level of complexity. So the great thing about code is if you have a production application, there is unanimous agreement about what is in that application because that is the lines of code. And even better than that, there are well established methodologies for making changes to that application that go live the instant you make those changes. So there's consensus, not in just the blockchain sense, there, just in the database sense. There is code, and everybody can point to that code and say that is what the product is. And if you want to make a change, there's a methodology for making that change. You can instantly revert to the old state or keep the new state. You can organize how you make changes. Nobody has to communicate anything. It's just live instantly all the time. And when you look at a hyper complex business, take Amazon maybe as an example. If Amazon were trying to do what they're doing with people, 0% chance it would work. So actually the thing that I think is really special about code is if you do it right, the level of complexity of a task that you can take on is actually orders of magnitude greater than if you don't have code. And maybe there's someone somewhere who has figured out how to train people in real time well enough to do that, but I'd be shocked if it's as good as code.
Yeah.
So it's actually really, really cool. Um, and one of our problems in the early days is, we didn't write enough code. We had too many people doing things. And that's faster, but it's more brittle. And one of the reasons we had to slow down, we were growing at an insane clip for a while, and we had enough money and enough demand on the student side to keep growing, is we knew that without codifying our practices and without turning many of our services into products, we wouldn't be able to scale without having a really varied experience. And we were starting to see that with a couple of programs that we launched that, even if we make a change verbally at the highest level, it's not cascading down fast enough. And there are, thousands of management books written about how to make that change cascade down quickly and how to make sure everybody's on the same page. But I think some of the most remarkable writing that I've read on management in the past 5 years is from so a book about Amazon's practices. I'd have to look it up, but
Yeah.
they
You can
basically.
find it.
But the notion is that if there is communication, that means something is broken, or the ideal amount of communication is as little as possible, because that means everything is living within the code. And if everybody can point to the code, then you don't have to communicate. That's the ideal state. And it took me a really long time to understand how true that was and how to make that happen. So we're getting there today. But yeah.
Was there a point? I mean, what was it about the point at which you knew you had to make that change or slow down? Because as I'm thinking of like a founder in a fast growing company, you're just kind of trying to get through everything and hard to kind of step back sometimes. But was there something that helped you, or just kind of felt it things breaking down or anything else?
Yeah, well, at the time, it was it was the amount of repetition that was required. So, obviously, as a CEO, you're repeating yourself all the time, but there would be little things where it's like, okay, we need to change this, the way we teach this in unit two. And you'd make the change in the curriculum or other stuff, but at the time we had, now we have kind of two tracks, and building a third. At the time, we had five tracks, and we had kind of three different continents. So we were in the US and the EU and Africa simultaneously, and those were all staffed differently. And just watching the way those diverged to where, everybody's in agreement on day one, and then 3 weeks later, you see the US doing something differently than Europe. And those forks are interesting, but what that shows you is that there is randomness and decision making in the product path
Yeah.
that, if you scale that out exponentially, that just causes brokenness. So there are a few ways to handle that. You can just highly centralize everything and nothing changes unless it comes from the top down. And we frankly went to that, for a while. But then you're not as agile and you feel everything grind to a halt. So the companies that have done operationally intensive stuff really well have figured out how to rely on code to make changes that disperse really quickly to different, fingers of the company, but everybody understands and works instantly. That's an art, but when it works incredibly well.